In the crisp autumn air of 1924, beneath the falling leaves of New Rochelle, New York, a secret love was quietly unraveling. A love that had dared to cross America's most violently guarded boundary, the color line. This wasn't a love story destined for novels or romance films. It was far more complicated. It was scandalous. It was tragic. And it would explode onto front pages across the country, igniting a national obsession over one question. What happens when a black woman marries a white man from America's ruling class, and the world demands to know what she really is? This is the haunting, unforgettable story of Alice Beatrice Jones and Leonard Kip Rhinelander.
But first, hi, I'm Lacey. Thank you for clicking on this video. If you enjoy this type of content, I invite you to subscribe and become part of our community. Alright, let's get back into it.
Leonard Kip Rhinelander was born into one of New York's most aristocratic families, the Rhinelanders, heirs to a real estate fortune so vast that even in the roaring 20s, their name carried the weight of history. Their lineage could be traced back to the Huguenots of France, to landowners, to war heroes, to the kind of wealth that cloaked itself in understated power. Leonard, the shy, stammering, emotionally sensitive son of the dynasty, had been sheltered all his life. He was not expected to shock the family. He was expected to inherit quietly, attend elite schools, marry within his class, and never embarrass the family name. And yet, it was Leonard who would become the center of a scandal that shattered the illusion of class, whiteness, and the American dream. Because in 1921, when he was just 20 years old, Leonard met someone who existed outside every expectation he had ever known. Her name was Alice Jones. She was a domestic worker, a chambermaid to be precise, but she was also far more than that. She was composed, impeccably dressed, and educated, a woman who held herself with an air of quiet confidence rarely afforded to black women of her era. Alice was born to an English mother and a black father, George Washington Jones, a coachman respected in their community for his upright character and strong work ethic. Alice herself had grown up in New Rochelle, just a few miles from the gilded world of the Rhinelanders, but she might as well have been born on another planet. And yet, they met, and they fell in love. For 3 years, they courted in secret. Leonard would sneak away from the expectations of his family, returning again and again to Alice's modest home. He met her father. He saw family photos. He stayed overnight. Despite the suffocating racial codes of the time, despite the laws in many states that would have outright banned their union, Leonard and Alice married in October of 1924. But here is where the story turns, abruptly and violently. Just a few weeks after their quiet courthouse wedding, Leonard's name appeared in bold black print on the front page of the New York Evening Journal. The headline read, "Rhinelander Marries Negro." It was a declaration, not just of scandal, but of social betrayal. Suddenly, every socialite in New York was whispering. Papers across the country picked up the story. The Rhinelander family, especially Leonard's father, took immediate and drastic action. They demanded Leonard leave his wife. He obeyed. He crumbled, and within weeks, he filed for an annulment, not on grounds of incompatibility or family pressure, but with a single, devastating claim that Alice had deceived him, that she had hidden her racial identity, and he, poor Leonard, had been tricked into marrying a woman of black descent. It was a cruel lie, and Alice, humiliated and heartbroken, did not go quietly. She fought. In 1925, the case of Rhinelander versus Rhinelander went to trial in White Plains, New York. The courtroom was packed. All eyes turned to Alice, this working-class black woman who now stood accused not of a crime, but of being herself. The prosecution, funded and pushed forward by the powerful Rhinelander family, claimed that Alice had passed for white, that Leonard could not possibly have known she was a woman of color, and that he had been deceived into a marriage he never would have agreed to otherwise. But the evidence told a very different story. Witness after witness testified that Leonard had been to Alice's home, that he had spoken with her father, a man whose skin was visibly dark, that he had slept beside her, visited her repeatedly, even before their marriage. He had seen her, he had known, and he had loved her. And yet, under the crushing weight of white supremacy and elite social expectation, Leonard had chosen to betray her and himself rather than face public disgrace. But perhaps the most grotesque moment of the trial, the moment that seared itself into American legal history, came when Alice was forced to disrobe in front of the jury. Yes, in a courtroom in the so-called modern North, in the state of New York, a black woman was ordered to undress, to expose her body to an all-white, all-male jury so they could inspect the color of her skin. It was humiliation masquerading as evidence. But Alice, in all her quiet defiance, endured it. She stood before them, her dignity intact. Because while the courtroom tried to reduce her to flesh and shade, Alice Jones was offering something they could never touch: the truth. The jury ruled in Alice's favor. They found that Rhinelander had not been deceived, that he had known her racial background all along, that he had willingly married her and only turned on her once the harsh light of racism threatened his inheritance. It was a stunning victory, not just for Alice, but for every woman who had ever been told her truth was not enough, for every person who had been judged not by the content of their character, but by the tone of their skin. But the aftermath was bittersweet. Alice never remarried. She lived the rest of her life in quiet anonymity, working as a nurse's aide, rarely speaking of the trial that had once defined her in the public eye. She died in 1989, over 6 decades after her name had made national headlines. Rhinelander died in 1936 in a mental institution. He was 50 years old, broken, forgotten, and consumed by the consequences of his cowardice. The case of Alice Jones and Leonard Kip Rhinelander has long since faded from most history books, but it remains one of the clearest, most haunting examples of the lies that uphold white supremacy, and the quiet bravery of those who refuse to lie about who they are. Alice Jones never passed. She was always Alice, black, proud, and true. It was Leonard who passed as a man of courage and failed. In a country obsessed with race, inheritance, and appearances, Alice stood trial not for a crime, but for her very existence. And when the world tried to shame her, she gave them something else instead: dignity.
If you found this story as captivating as we did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. We will continue to uncover more untold stories from history, stories that reveal the hidden truths of those who lived in the shadows of society's boundaries.